Niall McKenzie, a computer science student at the Idaho State University in Pocatello, Idaho, and 8 years of experience at rated chess tournaments, got a rating of 610 after his first tournament in 2017. After that, he played at tournaments sporadically due to the lack of events in nearby areas, but was able to reach his peak USCF rating of 1832 at the 33rd Annual North American Open in Nevada in 2023. His opponent, a national master at the time, 13 years of experience at rated chess tournaments, and crossing 2300 to a peak international rating of 2342, giving him an international title of FIDE Master, was not prepared for what was going to happen in round 1 at the 2022 Denker Tournament of Scholastic Champions in Palm Springs, California. So this is the game with Niall McKenzie, one of the strongest players in Idaho actually. His peak USCF rating of 1832, I think he has a peak rating for FIDE of 1790, but I believe he doesn't really play much or play many FIDE tournaments. The good thing about or achievements by Niall, he's won the Idaho Open Championship in 2023. He's won the Eastern Idaho Championship also in 2023. He's won the Scholastic Championship in 2022 and was a nominee for the Denker Tournament of Scholastic Champions in 2022 as well. So he has good experience. He's been playing chess for quite some time, I think about 8 years or so. And I had the opportunity to play against him in my first video for the PET series. You'll be able to see, or I talk about the game because I remember I didn't write the notation that well. So I think I just mainly talk about what happened in the game. But here we can start with the game. And this was at the 2022 Denker Tournament of Scholastic Champions in Palm Springs, California. And this is where all the champions, Scholastic champions, play, right? It's a big tournament, an amazing venue in Palm Springs. And yeah, Niall plays e4. And then he's going against a very strong opponent, a title player. And as I mentioned in the intro, well, out of respect, we're just keeping the first letters of the names. But this player was a national master back then. But later on, he was able to get the FIDE title, the international title for the FIDE Master. He was able to get a peak rating of 2342 or something, close to the international master requirement for rating, you know. I mean, he would have to get the norms as well, but up there, very strong player, right? So e4, e5, and we go with knight f3, knight c6, and then going for bishop c4. Bishop c4 just tells us that we're going into the Italian game. This is the Italian game. And then we have a response of knight f6. Very solid here by both players. d3, h6, the idea of h6 here, just preventing any annoying pins, right, from the bishop. You don't want to deal with that. And then just castles, and then d6 to let the other bishop out. And then here we're not sure what's the idea, right, because the opponent can always go for like bishop trade or something, and then bring the queen and then castle along. And keep in mind that there is a huge difference for the ratings, right? So 1700 at this point, Niall was 1718 and the opponent was 2178, but already getting the title of national master. So this means that the opponent, Niall's opponent, already reached 2200 prior to this tournament, right, to obtain that title. So here, just regular move h3, preventing also the pins from the opponent, right? And then g6. G6, a little bit, I would consider this a little bit suspicious, you know. But at the same time, you can always have ideas of moving the knight and then going for an attack. Remember that we have a stronger opponent, right? So your opponent will try to play risky chess, which means that they're gonna go for this like certain risks so that they can like capitalize on our mistakes so that they can win then, right? And that's the idea. Here, trying to fianchetto the bishop and then maybe using this as an attack. But here, the opponent actually just decides to like just castle right away. Just castles, just trying to play solid chess and maybe focus more on our mistakes, right? On this case, on Niall's mistakes. But here, Niall also playing very solid, putting a lot of pressure here on the h6 pawn. Let's say if the opponent doesn't do anything about it, now we can just capture a pawn here, be up a pawn for free for like nothing in return, right? So I mean that's good. We would just be up a pawn against a national master, very good. But obviously the opponent saw it, so very common in these positions to just bring the king up to defend this pawn. And then here we want to like try to create some pressure maybe at one point. But the problem with this right away is that they can always capture. They can capture with the knight, things like that, right? So just developing. And here Niall, good move, bringing the rook from the A square to the D1 square. And the idea is that we want to push the pawn forward. That's the idea. We just want to push the pawn forward. Knight retreats, and the problem here in this positions is that the bishop, the light square bishop, is very stuck here, right? You have to move the knight to bring the bishop out or something, and it's a little bit tricky to just try to trade the bishop here. So we can go back here. Imagine this position here. If we were to capture, now the g pawn is very weak, right? So we can try to target at one point, maybe with a knight here or something, and try to weaken certain squares. So maybe that's why the opponent just went for that, and then captures, going for certain like different traits. And here Niall goes with like bishop b3. Maybe a better move would have been to just bring the bishop to e2 to have a nice scope here, and also just preventing like or covering certain jumps of the knight, right? But here, this is what Niall went for. The problem with this one is like now the opponent has knight c5, and he's going to grab the bishop pair. He's gonna keep the bishop pair for him, have the nice advantage, and he goes for that. We're doubling our pawns. That is not too big of a deal, but not having the bishop pair is a little bit annoying, especially because our bishop was very strong, always covering or targeting certain weaknesses on the black position. But here we're still playing, you know, we're playing chess, we're going for it, and his opponent goes for f5. f5, very committal move, and then we just capture. We have a very open center here, and then always keeping this targeted. Yes. So here, just trying to get rid of the opponent's bishop was like we want to take the bishop pair advantage away from our opponent, right? So that's the idea. Now we just target the knight. The knight is very annoying, right? So we want to get rid of it, but maybe not now. In the future, we're still targeting those weaknesses because we're always keeping the tension here, targeting this weakness. Maybe if they were to like push the pawn forward, maybe we could capture, but at the same time, we're getting rid of our bishops completely. It will be two knights versus two bishops. That's I would consider this a huge disadvantage for the white pieces. So king h1 with the future prospects of pushing the f pawn forward at one point, and also having like nice positions here for the bishop on g3 to keep that pressure along the diagonal, right, the dark squares. And then knight there, attacking the knight, we just go for the trade. And then the problem with this one is that the bishop is always having a really good scope towards our white king, right? And then the bishop just retreats, and here goes queen d7. If we're not careful here, imagine we make a move like this. Now we just lose to mate in 2, right? So they would have a queen takes h3 check, and if the king moves, and the problem is that we cannot capture the queen, right? Because the bishop is pinning the pawn to the king. So if we move here, that would just be checkmate in 1. We need to always be careful because there are always threats that happen throughout the game. So here, Niall defends very well with king h2. King h2 just defends the pawn, so we just prevent any sort of attacks and checks and tactics like that, right? So here, the opponent just doubles up. We just push our pawn forward. We don't want to have just one piece defending a pawn. We just want the pawns to defend each other, right? So the opponent brings the rook forward, maybe overextend a little bit, but at the same time trying to put a lot of pressure onto the king. The king has a bishop in front of it. And also, we can keep in mind that if we were to move our knight somewhere at one point, the dark square bishop from the opponent is always targeting the b2 square, right? The b2 pawn there, which is undefended. We can try to trap it, but it's not super clear, right? So here, the queen attacking the rook, but it's not really attacking the rook here. We're trying to put some pressure through X-ray vision, right? So what does that mean? X-ray vision, in this case, when I say this, it means that we're putting some pressure not to the first piece that our piece is looking at, but behind it. You know, what's behind the piece that we're looking at right now. So right now, directly, we're looking at the rook on f5. But indirectly, also through X-ray vision, seeing past it, we're looking at the g6 pawn. A weakness. If for some reason we're able to bring our knight all the way, somehow bring it all the way to h4 or something, we can try to target the g6 square and go for some attacks, try to capture the pawn and try to turn the turn the tables, right? So rook h5. Rook h5, it's an okay move, I would think. The problem is that the rook can kind of get stuck in a way, right? So if we were to move the pawn forward at one point, or maybe this other pawn, we can try to target the rook. But the good thing about this rook, though, is that it's putting a lot of pressure onto our pawns. The opponent can consider some sacrifices at one point, maybe to come with a queen or something, right? So we need to be careful with this. So Niall just brings the rook to e1, just pawn a6 here, preventing any knight jumps, which could target the c7 pawn or something. Pretty good. And then Niall goes for the double up. He's trying to double up the rooks, trying to counter attack his opponent. But at the same time, I would believe that Niall will be fine with a draw. If he can get a draw against a national master, that would be a big result for him, right? He would still win a bunch of points, but ideally you want to win, right? You want to win, but when you're playing against a stronger opponent, you're trying to like play defensive, right? Trying to hold everything you can, trying to play well, trying to play solid. We just gotta be careful though, okay? And if we can take advantage of something, then we can go for it. In this case, now Niall finds rook e6. Rook e6 now putting the pressure. We're not putting the pressure with a knight, but in this case, we're putting the pressure with the rook, right? So now we're looking at the g6 square. And that's a very good move, right? Because if they don't do anything, keep in mind, right? If they don't do anything, we can actually just capture the pawn here. And if the king moves somewhere, we can just capture the rook here for free, right? So always, we need to like think about what our opponent wants to do. So that's what the national master, what the opponent was able to see, and just let's say defends it by bringing the rook back to f5, right? So maybe at one point or previously, bringing the rook here wasn't the best idea, just because then you had to just bring it back anyways. And now you don't have that attack because you would just lose your queen for no reason. Okay, so here Niall just goes back. I believe that if he's like, okay, you want a repetition, just draw, sure, that'll be fine for him. But of course, the opponent will he wouldn't want to get a draw because he would lose a lot of points just for drawing the game against someone that is very way lower rated than him, right? So queen goes back, and now Niall finds an amazing tactic here. Bishop e5, putting pressure onto this dark square bishop. And the problem is that you cannot capture this bishop, right, with a pawn, because you would just lose your queen. You just lose your queen for no reason. It's for a pawn, right? And what happens if the bishop takes? Now you can actually capture with the rook. And the pawn still cannot capture the rook because you would just lose the queen, right? And if rook takes, and then the game's still fine. And Niall's heading towards a draw. He wants to get a draw against this strong player. And he's fine with that. Yes. So that didn't happen. They didn't capture back, but they just retreated the bishop to the back, still protecting the h6 square and not protecting all our pawns. And now the bishop is hanging, but Niall just brings the bishop back to the different side, right? Instead of protecting the king here, now we want to look at the king, at the black king, and block certain squares, which is pretty good, right? Okay, the queen goes there. And now we go with g3, just kicking the queen out, right? So there are different ideas. We can always bring the king here or something, but I think this is a very good just moving forward. Moving forward, kicking the queen out. The queen is trying to, or the black pieces are trying to just weaken your position. But here you can take advantage of the situation by just pushing the pawn to f4. Pawn to f4, right? So the problem would be we cannot really do g5. G5 will be pretty bad, especially because now we're pinning our rook to our king for no reason. So we gotta be careful here. And that position would just turn, if we were to move g5, the position turns into +6, +7 for the white pieces. We need to be careful with these positions, okay? So f4, the opponent goes with queen c8. And queen c8, the idea of this is now we're looking at the h3 square. Remember that Niall had a pawn on g2, and he pushed it forward, and then he pushes other pawn forward as well on the f file. But now, what does that mean? Whenever you push your pawns forward, you're weakened in certain squares. Yes? So whenever we move our g pawn forward, now the opponent has a different target. Now he wants to target the h3 square. Maybe bring in the rook here. And it's a little bit tricky to defend it, right? We need to be careful. So Niall brings his knight to e4, and then rook h5. So here you have a couple options, right? We need to defend this pawn somehow. And the good thing about this move here that Niall did is that he can always bring the knight to f2. But also the approach that he had was very good too. And actually, it's about equal, right? So he went for h4, right? And you can never push the pawn forward because you have some discover attacks like this, right? Discover check, and then you pick up the queen. So you get, the black pieces have to be careful too. It's very tricky to play for both sides, right? So here, adding pressure by bringing the bishop, and you have some certain sacrifices that you can do, okay? And then the knight just goes back, because if they were to take, you can always just try to capture or something, and then there's nothing there. You can try to run away. The queen goes there, trying to put more pressure on the f file, and then just rook up. And this is an amazing find here. So here, so the position is pretty fine here. Even though white has better chances, it's like plus 1.5, plus 1.6. But after the opponent goes with like queen f8, the position turns into like plus 6.2 or something. Crazy. And then Niall finds the idea. Rook e6. Putting pressure on g6. And now we're going in. We're going in. And you can have ideas of just capturing with a queen and picking up the rook here on h5. And it's very tricky to defend this position now, right? What would be some ideas to defend it? If you try to defend it with like queen g8 or something, now you can just capture this bishop here. Because like the queen and the rook were defending it before. Now it's only the rook because we're trying to defend a better square. So it is very tricky, right? How can you defend it? So the opponent goes with bishop f8. Bishop f6. Bishop f6, trying to block or obstruct this rook from covering this square here on g6. And then the good thing is that Niall doesn't rush. He doesn't just capture the bishop. He brings more pieces in, and that's one concept that we should like always keep in mind. Sometimes we rush right away. We see like, oh, we can just capture that piece right away. But we probably had like a more forceful sequence, you know? Or better, just adding more pressure. Thinking of, you know, like adding just a lot of pressure onto your opponent, like they won't know what to do, right? So now the position here, the advantage keeps going up for the white pieces. Now it's like plus 7.3 or so. And he's finding the right ideas. And here we can just capture with check. And this is what happened in the game. Rook takes, and now here we can just capture the rook with the bishop. And we're up the exchange already. Okay? They capture back. Here, if we want, we can capture already with the rook. That's fine. Both are winning. But he found a good idea of just adding more pressure. We want to add more pressure. Find the better moves. Rook check. King moves out of the way. And now the queen is pinning the rook. So sometimes that's kind of nice of thinking like, not just like trading right away and like still like, yeah, you might be winning. You need to prove it. Your opponent might be able to find some drawing chances or things like that. Yes. And we have to be careful because here we don't have rook e8 trying to pin the queen to the king because the bishop is still protecting the e file. Yes. So we have to be careful. Here we're just adding more pressure. Little by little, okay? The king moves out of the pin, and we just capture a pawn. And the idea is, I don't know if you remember from the videos before that we've been learning, but the white rooks on the 7th rank are very strong. And for the black pieces, the rooks on the 2nd rank are very strong. So yes, we have one strong rook on the 7th rank, but why can't we have both of them, right? So here after the opponent goes g5, we don't care about the pawns. Because if we start opening things up, you know, if they take, they have some ideas of checks and things like that, trying to go for perpetual, and maybe like giving you a checkmate at one point or something on h1, maybe. But here just Niall finds this great idea. So here you have a couple options. You have two options which are amazing, right? So you have the option by the computer. Top move would be bringing the other rook and having the battery here and kind of unstoppable checkmate. You have to give up a queen or things like that. You know, it's very tough to deal with. But then Niall finds another amazing idea as well, which is queen d3. And queen d3, let's say you capture a pawn here or something, now you just have checkmate in one. So that's the idea, right? We just bring the queen infiltrates, and that's very good for us. So that's the idea. The opponent was able to see it, and then they just want to trade everything. They're saying, okay, we're losing, like, what, we're losing. We need to just trade everything right now. Somehow we can try to manage to get a draw in this position, even though the position's very losing for the black pieces. And here, instead of rushing, again, find better moves, more forceful moves. Queen g6 check. Queen g6 check, it's very tough for them to deal with, because what happens if the king moves away to h8? Now you can even capture this with the rook. You can capture the rook with the rook, and you're threatening checkmating 1, and you're threatening the queen. The queen will have to like sacrifice itself, and now you're totally winning here, right? Up a queen. So it's very hard to deal with in these situations. The opponent was able to see it, so he just went with rook g7. Rook g7, and here an idea would be to just capture with the rook, add a little pressure, but same idea, just capture with the queen. The queens come off the board, and now we just capture the pawns in the middle. Captures, captures. The king gets closer to capture the pawn on g5, and then Niall finds the check first. Yes, capture my pawn. It's all right. I capture your other pawn. And then after the bishop tries to target something that they like, whatever it can target, right? c2, the pawn on c2, we just push it forward, right? And what's the problem with this move here, for example? If the king goes to g4 right away, we have ideas of trying to pin the bishop already. If we pin the bishop, the king will get closer. We can even capture this and try to go for a promotion ourselves. So they don't want to get pinned like that, right? But we target, in this case, we're targeting like certain weaknesses here. If the bishop moves somewhere, we can just capture a pawn. But here the opponent says, you know what? I'm going to trap your rook. Now the rook is trapped. But is it trapped? We can just capture the bishop. We capture the bishop here on c6. They capture back. And after king g2, Niall's opponent resigned. And why? You would think, why would he resign? And it's because you have 4 pawns versus 2 pawns. These pawns are split, and wherever the king moves, you can always just try to guide your pawn, protect it, and try to promote here on g8. If anything, too, you can try to push your pawn forward and have his king like go back to defend the g8 square, and then you can just move towards the other pawns on the left side of the board and just capture them and like be 3-0 and promote into a queen. And in this position here, Niall was able to defeat a national master at a big tournament, big event. Props to him. That's amazing, I don't know what to say. Well, maybe you can hear from him. So here is Niall McKenzie. Niall, I have a few questions for you. Well, first of all, thank you for for coming here for the interview. So what were your emotions before, during, and after the game? This is a big event, So how do you feel?
Yeah, so after winning the Scholastic, the first round, I was like one of the lowest rated players in the tournament. And so first round, it paired me against a national master. And before the game, I had never even played someone above the rating of 2100. So before the game, I was very nervous
Of
and
course.
just intimidated because I'm just like, what am I going to do? I've never played someone this strong before. And then during the game, I kind of had a different mindset than how I normally play. I was like, let's just play more solid and just see what he does. And then eventually I started to get like positionally outplayed, and I'm like, okay, staying solid isn't working. Let's get aggressive. And then I kind of just forced all of his pieces back during the game. And eventually he blundered a tactic, which won me the game. And then after the game, I was super happy. I guess just beating a first ever national master and you beat him. It's quite the feeling. I loved it.
Yeah, no, and especially because I was doing some digging, I guess, about this national master. I mean, out of respect here, I just have the first letters of the name. But he was a national master at that point, and then later on he became a FIDE master and getting a rating of a FIDE rating of 2340 something, 43 or something crazy. My other question would be, any moments during the game that you recall being crucial? Like you were saying that there were some tactics. Like what moves during the game were, the deciding factor for you, where you thought, okay, now I have a chance.
Okay, so when he played Rook F5, on move 23, I like that was when I realized like trying to play solid just wasn't working for me.
Okay.
So that's when I started to activate my pieces. So, like as you see in the game, I got my rooks that weren't doing anything, just defensive. Like I got them lined up. I'm like, okay, let's try and just play. So I made like a couple threats until eventually he allowed, I believe it's Bishop E5, and after I played Bishop E5, I'm just like, okay, I feel a lot more comfortable now
If bishop
because
e5
either
on move 30. Okay, yes. This one here was, I think like that was probably the top engine move. I think when I was looking at the game, that was very good because you're getting rid of the dark square bishop on g7, which is very annoying because you can never move your knight without losing the pawn on b2 at one point, right? So that's a
yeah.
very insane move. And I think I was able to do the recap there. If they were to capture with the bishop, you can capture with the rook, and they can never capture with the pawn because the queen is hanging in the back, right? So perfect. Just making like these decisions, I think that definitely was a crucial one. I really liked, to me, the move 36 when we have knight f2, and I think the good thing about knight f2 always defending this, there were some sacrifices at one point, and then him being able to activate the rook on h5 was crucial. You finding the move h4, to prevent anything, but then bring in the knight, and then here, once the opponent goes queen f5, queen f8, sorry, finding rook e6, that's just, there's no way that they can defend this at all, right? And we were seeing, I was doing in the recap here that if queen g8, now you just capture the bishop there on e7. You just up a piece.
Yeah. I think he sort of panicked because I was like it was a drawn position, and I think he's like, I don't want to draw this person that's 500 rating points lower than me.
Yeah.
So he's just like, let's try this like idea of queen f8, rook h5, like this attack, and I think he just missed that rook e6
Yeah, and
tactic.
I think during the recap, I was noticing that you kind of wanted to draw this game because we were like repeating certain moves, bringing the rook back to e3, and I mean that's a perfect score against a national master. You get a draw, you win a bunch of points still,
Yeah.
but then finding these moves, and also like the rook on h5 is a little bit away from the whole play, misplaced I would think, and then finding like rook e6, that's just a crucial move where he just had to trade them, being patient with knight g4. That's just amazing because now they has to defend back, bring the rook back, and then be down the exchange, and then you being patient was nice with the check, not even capturing back right away because the bishop's still annoying. He can try to get a draw or something. Just rook e7 check, and then these ideas, right, of pinning the rook and just being annoying. That's so nice, right?
Yeah.
Because here, if nothing happens, you can always have like bring the other rook to like e6. you know, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Perfect. My other question is, what are your chess or your goals in chess? Any short-term goals? Any long-term goals?
So my short-term goal is to get to 1900 because I currently just broke the 1800 rating level.
Perfect.
And so my short-term goal, like probably this year, is to get to 1900, and my long-term goal is to get the national master title.
Yeah, perfect. No, that's a good goal, and also that reminds me of Kostov Kolihali. He was able to get his national master title recently. I was able to congratulate him, and that's amazing. That's always a nice goal to have, especially a player here in Idaho that everybody knows, right? That we all know, the locals
Yeah.
here. Getting a title like that, an achievement. That's amazing. So perfect. I think you're on your way to that. That's very nice. And I was also mentioning at the beginning of the video in the intro that, I mean, the thing with Idaho, we are a very tight community, especially the newcomers like me, but we don't have many events. It's very hard
Yeah.
to get to different events. We have to travel outside the state to find something because, especially where I live, um, I only have a couple tournaments a year. So
Yeah.
if I want to have more, I have to drive to Boise. It's like 6 hours or something. So any advice that you have for those who want to improve their chess skills?
I would say to just I would say to just play in tournaments, just get your just have experience, And then also I would say to just keep your play style. Like I learned that the more tournaments I play in, the more I'm like keep to your style. It doesn't matter if you're playing someone way lower than you. It doesn't matter if you're playing someone way higher than you. Just play how you play, I guess.
No, that's a great advice because from one of my tournaments, I think my first tournament, I went against Bryce, the Scholastic champion back then, and I'm not an attacker, I'm not an aggressive player, and I'm a very positional player. And I against him, he threw me off, and I just started like sacrificing pieces for no reason. So that's a great advice. Thank you. And any general advice for tournaments?
Just keep calm. I just play the person, not the rating. That's what I would say.
So more like psychology, like a mental game more
Yeah, it's
than
like
more than
psychology is
anything.
the perfect example. Just the person you're playing is human.
Niall, thank you so much for meeting with me. Thank you for sharing your game. And I wish you the best in your chess goals, short terms, and hopefully getting that NM title and maybe like something else after that. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
thank you for having me.
And thank you everyone for watching the video. This was Niall. I'll see you guys on the next one.